welcome to the Downtown Den. I'm now joined by Mark Williams from Western Union Business Solutions even. Hello, Mark, you okay?
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not bad. It's just Friday afternoon now, so we're coming to the end of another week at home. So how's your week been?
It's Friday. I didn't realise it was Friday.
Yeah, you do lose track of days.
No, it's been a busy week. It's been a busy and productive week despite the lockdown, so it's good.
Good. Just to kick off, Mark, can you just give us an overview from sort of your perspective as a business of sort of where the economy is at the minute?
Yeah, sure. To point out, it's probably quite important. I am no economist. However, we have our own analysts in-house, and we do partner with Oxford Economics, who are a globally credible economics and analytical firm, and our content partners. So, I've been plugged into a number of different pieces of analytics over the recent weeks, which should put me in good stead to give some sort of overview. Obviously, we've seen quite some reaction within financial markets globally in relation to this fairly unprecedented time that we're working through at the moment. The currency market is no exception to that. Stock markets took a plummet and then recovered to some point, and still remain particularly liquid. The FX market is much the same. If I use the sterling dollar rate as an example, we were pre the coronavirus pandemic, we were trading about 130. We hit a 35-year low of 114.5 overnight on one particular day, and we're now trading back up somewhere in the middle. So there has been a recovery to that, but financial markets internationally remain particularly volatile and reacting to the situation, which is progressive daily. In fact, only today, US non-farm payrolls came out forecasted at a negative 100,000, was negative 700,000, and that goes on top of the over 6 million new jobless claims earlier this week. I think that just goes to show you the scale of the impact of the current pandemic, hopefully the measures taken will somewhat get this under control relatively quickly, so that we can start to relax the measures and resume business as usual in its full capacity as quickly as possible. But it's not going to be a very quick process to go through. It's not like you can turn the light switch back on again at full pace. It's more of a dimmer switch approach where it has to be turned on sort of gradually, and that's what we'll hope to see over the coming months, provided we can get the numbers under control in the recent weeks. We have just produced a webinar with our content partners at Oxford Economics. I believe that's going to be shared through Downtown's communication channels on Monday.
Yeah.
I would advise anybody watching this to take 25 minutes out of your day to watch it. It's quite insightful and in many respects fairly warming. From an economic perspective, it's very unprecedented and unpredictable times, and the actions that the government have taken make things slightly easier to forecast. Obviously, what's impacting on markets internationally is low consumer and business confidence, and some sectors are seeing a brief boost in growth as panic buying kicks in. I would imagine that the supermarkets will report some fairly strong figures at some point this quarter. There's things like the computer game sector where people are trying to remain entertained, etc. Pharmaceutical, obviously, but there are other business sectors that have felt the pinch fairly dramatically. But what is clear is that we are heading down the route of a very deliberate recession at this point in time, and there is an economic production sacrifice for the purpose of well-being. And the measures that the government have taken are obviously that to ensure that there is as little impact as possible, so that the individuals and businesses come out the other end of this thing as unscathed as possible, and to prevent as many people from becoming unemployed, and to prevent many businesses as possible from going under. So if you look at those measures, the 80% salary for staff placed on furlough, which essentially means that there is a job for them to come back to, that when business picks up again, that they can recommence working. That's all about ensuring that people can live through these times when, frankly, they're probably saving quite a lot of money as well, because let's face it, what is there that we can go out and spend our money on other than food in the supermarket and drugs in the cupboard in case we get poorly. And businesses have been able to, they've got VAT relief, there are mortgage holidays, there are measures put in place to prevent evictions from landlords, etc., etc. So essentially it means that businesses can go to sleep and wake up the other side of this. And it's a very deliberate strategy. And that's what really differentiates the current economic crisis to that 2008 financial crisis, is that we're very different circumstances. The fairly warming thing that came out of the analysis within the webinar was that history suggests that as much as we are likely to see a very sharp downturn or contraction in the UK economy over the coming quarter, Oxford Economics forecast this at around 3% at this point in time for Q2. History shows in similar events or crises that where it's very sharp and happens very quickly but is relatively short-lived, the recovery should be equally quick. And there are some very positive forecasts for 2021 from Oxford Economics in terms of a return to growth and a growth figure of potentially around 4%. Obviously, these numbers are somewhat variable and subject to change based on how long this thing drags out, and how long before we can return business as usual. But ultimately, a quick return to growth and a quick recovery from this is why the measures that have been introduced. Some are working not quite so well. The feedback that I've had from some customers and some of our partners who provide fiscal support and credit, etc., is that the capital that was secured or guaranteed to an extent by the British Business Bank as part of the government's announcement, it isn't reaching industry quickly enough.
Yeah.
And probably needs to be addressed. But outside of that, it seems that the measures are early signs working okay. And let's just hope that we can get on top of the infection numbers. And I think that we're already seeing some encouraging signs in terms of the daily updates around that.
Yeah, I give the webinar a watch last night, and I echo your thoughts. It is well worth a watch, and some positive messages coming out of it as well. Is there anything at the minute, Mark, from your perspective, that sort of businesses should be keeping an eye on, maybe be wary of, or with the changes in sort of how we're working?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing is for sure is that we'll probably come out of this thing with a completely different working culture. It's been a shock to the system of many people having to go from office-based environments to working from home, but the amount of businesses that are managing to continue business as usual is somewhat encouraging. One thing that I would highlight as something to look out for is the increased risk of fraud. There are opportunistic fraudsters out there. We're actually in the middle of producing a fraud article to help safeguard or help businesses safeguard against potential fraud attempts. But as COVID-19 impacts globally, we are starting to see fraudsters making increased attempts to penetrate businesses. Some of that through the interception of sensitive documents such as invoices, and others through, the hacking of systems. I have heard directly of cases where invoices have been intercepted, and the payment details changed on those invoices, so that people think that they're paying an invoice to a supplier as usual, but actually they're paying somebody who's essentially trying to get their money, and if they're successful, that could cause some problems, particularly for SMEs. So I would encourage people to be extra diligent and ensure that you have extra flags in place in these times to protect your business and your business capital against potential fraudulent attempts. We are pretty hot on that. As a business, we have various beneficiary payment due diligence processes in place and verification processes in place. So we'll never pay anybody new on behalf of a client. We'll never payment to new bank details without first undertaking an amount of due diligence on the recipient's details, and also asking our clients to verify and essentially double check that that's exactly where they want the money to be sent. And it's important to be extra diligent in these times. Medical equipment supply, of course, is something that has been all over the news. Unfortunately, where there is a huge demand, there will also be an increase in potential fraudulent activity. Be very wary of retailers' websites, people selling things, and the legitimacy of it, and ensure that you know what you're buying. Just to throw some stats out there from the research that we've done in the article that we are seeking to release, which I'm sure Downtown and Downtown's member base will get sight of, but FBI IC3 suggests that that globally over $26.5 billion of business losses has been made since 2016 due to email compromise. Again, from an email perspective, I've just undertaken our internal phishing training that I have to do periodically, and there are some really useful tips around that, in that, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Double check the email address. I had one from Box myself this week, or perceiving to be from Box, that I don't think was. Don't open an attachment unless you know exactly what it is, and certainly don't follow any links or URLs. In fact, if you hover over them and look beyond I think it's the first or second slash, you can see exactly where it's taking you. So make sure that you're undertaking the right level of training and diligence around fraud and potential phishing scams as well, because the unfortunate thing about situations and crises like this is that it is rife for opportunistic fraudsters to try to strike.
Okay, interesting. This is a whole new way of working for a lot of us, this home working, but something that you've done for many years now. Obviously, I've no doubt you'll be missing attending the events and the social aspect to our jobs. But have you got any tips or anything that you've done over the years whilst working from home that sort of help you manage your day?
Yeah, plenty. I've been a remote worker for some time now, but I've not been used to working from home for such prolonged periods. I'm usually at your great events and other events, and I probably spend 4 out of 5 days a week face-to-face engaging, whether that be through events or through meetings and traveling all over the place. So it's taken me a little while to get used to being at home every day. But one thing that I would suggest is that creating good habits and good structure around the working day are really, really important. I've always worked to the philosophy that no day is different, whether I'm hitting the road to go to a Downtown in Business breakfast event that kicks off at 8 o'clock, or whether I'm at home working that morning. My alarm goes off the same time. I get showered and changed and shaved the same time. I just end up online earlier, and I can ease into my day with breakfast and tea and all of that sort of stuff. in these times where it might feel slightly isolated and slightly less personal. You know, we've got some great software and technology around us in this day and age that we should be fully utilising. The software that we're using right now to do this webinar is a great testament of that. And I think that the power of having that visibility and being able to see somebody and read people's body language can't be underestimated. There's a great deal of communication that's lost if you don't have that visibility. So I would encourage people to use technology as much as they can, and make sure that you're speaking to people. You know, it can get lonely, but you know, we've got colleagues, we've got partners, we've got clients. There's people that we can be speaking to, and I'm still speaking to people throughout a good chunk of most of my working day. Most importantly, take breaks. Ensure that you take good structured breaks throughout the day, and find something to keep your mind occupied. Seeing as we're afforded a daily exercise outing by the government at present, I take full use of that. I've just had my daily walk around the canals in Manchester and through the city centre, back through Spinningfield. Probably did about 7,000 or 8,000 paces, but it's good. Get some fresh air. Clear your mind, and I usually like to take a short break in the afternoon as well, where I'm normally pottering around doing some sort of housework, which reduces the stuff that I have to do at the weekend as well. But in my mind, I'm always planning what I'm going to do when I'm getting back to my desk and what I want to achieve throughout the rest of the day. If you're old school like me, a to-do list is absolutely fantastic as well. I work from top to bottom. I categorise. If you want to have some more insight through the window of my working habits, I've just written an article and published that on LinkedIn, which I think Downtown were kind enough to share also. There's a few hints and tips for any workers that might be struggling to come to terms with these new working environments during these fairly challenging times.
Yeah, it's been interesting for us. I think what you say about breaks is crucial, because some days you can be so engrossed in what you're doing, you can look at your clock and it's gone 3 o'clock. So what's it like in Manchester at the minute then, when you're out and about? Very quiet, I'd say?
Really quiet, yeah, really quiet. There seemed to be a lot of police on the streets earlier in the week. That seems to have somewhat slowed now, which I hope means that they've decided there's not a lot for them to do, because most people are following and adhering to the instructions as they should be. But it's eerily quiet. The city centre is normally buzzing, and you know, it's quite easy to walk around and keep that social distance that you keep getting told about, because you know, there are very few cars, very few people. You can walk on opposite sides of the pavement, etc. So. But it's nice to get out and about. The problem is every time I walk past a nice looking pub or restaurant, I
was just going to say that we do enjoy our food and a pint on occasion. So where are you looking forward to going first when you can?
Oh, that's a great question. Do you know what? I really don't know. Maybe, Chris, we should have a meeting at Fazenda at some point.
Definitely.
Because that's always been a favourite of mine. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting back to events and getting back to the more social side of our roles, and being able to enjoy the freedom and the luxuries of life that we've probably come to take for granted.
Yeah, definitely.
They've been taken away from us.
Yeah.
All for the greater good. All for the greater good.
Yeah. Right, top man. We'll wrap things up there. But yeah, thanks for dropping into the Downtown Den. Thanks for your input. And we'll look out for that webinar next week. Top man.
Thanks, Chris. And if anybody watching is interested in the blogs that we're producing, they'll all be available at business.westernunion.com. If you go to business.westernunion.com, you can go to our blog section. We're producing plenty of really insightful and thought-provoking content at the moment, and we will be producing regular webinars with our content partners at Oxford Economics. And of course, all of this great content will be fed through to our equally great partners at Downtown in Business.
Top man. Have a good weekend, mate.
Cheers, Chris. Have a great weekend.
Bye now.
Cheers, mate.